Hello and welcome to TVB News. A U.S.-bound cargo plane that departed from the city this morning had to return to Hong Kong International Airport mid-flight after leaving tire debris on the runway during takeoff. One of the aircraft's tires burst upon landing and was stuck on the north runway for some 8 hours. The incident left only one runway in operation and caused at least 180 flight delays, some for up to 5 hours. Timothy Lee has our top story.
The aircraft that remains stationary at the westernmost part of the north runway is a Boeing 747 freighter belonging to Atlas Air. Only the south runway was in service throughout the morning, where several planes could be seen queuing for takeoff. Inbound and departing aircraft had to take turns to use the runway. The Boeing 747 freighter had to unload its cargo on the spot and lighten its weight before its tires could be changed. The cargo plane blocked the north runway for some 8 hours before it was towed away at 3:30 in the afternoon to the midfield apron. The north runway resumed operations at 3:45 p.m., restoring the airport's dual runway service. The airport authority addressed the incident, saying the plane departed at 4:10 in the morning on the south runway. The authority later received reports of suspected tire debris on the runway. Cleaning work was immediately conducted and the runway was closed until 6:30. According to a flight tracking website, the aircraft flew for around half an hour and was close to Taipei before making its return to Hong Kong. It landed on the north runway before 7:30 a.m. when one of its tires burst upon making contact with the runway. None of its 5 crew members were injured. The airport authority said the incident was caused by a hydraulic system failure. Owing to the reduced runway availability, more than 180 flights suffered delays between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. Some travelers criticized the airport authority and relevant airlines for not providing them with enough information. This man said his friend had to wait in the plane for 3 hours, adding that he could have at least made some preparations if an announcement was broadcast on public transport. While this man said the announcement of his flight cancellation came too late and stressed relevant parties should have immediately notified him of the incident. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Some passengers have complained that the baggage policy of budget airline Hong Kong Express is inconvenient after the company adjusted the measure last month. The airline increased the number of their fare categories from 2 to 4 last month. The cheapest type of ticket allows passengers to bring a maximum of 7 kilograms of baggage on board. However, people can only bring that much if it can fit into this measuring gauge. This visitor from Shanghai is one of many passengers whose baggage failed to meet these size requirements. He said such a policy is extremely unacceptable, adding other airlines are not like this. The Consumer Council today said 51 complaints related to dental care have been received so far this year. The council reminds the public to pay attention to the reputation of dental clinics before using their services. Mimo Singhai reports.
Dental treatment is in high demand in the city. However, such services are not cheap compared to other places, such as the mainland. This has led to more residents traveling across the border to receive cheaper dental treatment. The Consumer Council said individuals should not simply consider the price when it comes to dental care. They also need to pay attention to the reputation of dentists and their treatment plans. A complainant told the council that he had signed up for an orthodontics program in a local dental center at cost of about $23,000. The program included 18 sets of aligners and a teeth reshaping procedure. The clinic later informed the man that no slots were available in their local clinic for teeth reshaping and asked him to have it performed at a Shenzhen clinic. The customer wanted a refund but was persuaded to try Shenzhen. However, he found that the 8th set of aligners did not fit and again demanded a refund from the dental center. The center refused repeated requests for a refund, leading the complainant to report the incident to the Consumer Council. The person finally received around $8,000 and managed to terminate the treatment program. Up until May, the Consumer Watchdog received 51 complaint cases related to dental services, including orthodontics programs, scaling, and dental implants.
We haven't received any complaints related to the dental service in the mainland yet. Even if we receive it, it is more convenient and easy for us to refer it to the counterparts. I mean, the Consumer Protection Council in China, which we have the case referral mechanism that we can refer the case for them, to handle directly.
The council said residents can file a complaint to mainland health authorities in the event of an incident or dispute. News 9, TVB News.
2 Canadians were arrested on suspicion of being involved in at least 3 theft cases at the airport. These items, including shoes and luxury products, were seized from the residence of the 2 suspects. Police received reports from 2 people last week saying their suitcases went missing at the airport. After checking the airport's CCTV footage, police found that the suspects randomly took away suitcases at the baggage hall. The duo were arrested on Saturday. Speaking to the press today, police officers said the pair was also involved in another theft at the airport in February. The officers said the 2 had sold some of the stolen items. Premier Li Qiang today held talks with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Canberra today. They agreed to properly manage their country's differences while expanding cooperation in areas of mutual interest. Li said that China will include Australia in its visa waiver program. Danny Zhou reports.
Premier Li Qiang and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese convened the annual leaders' meeting at Parliament House in the Australian capital. Albanese noted the 2 countries have complementary economies and shared interests, while acknowledging differences between their respective political systems, approaches, and priorities.
There's no fixed model for a stabilised relationship. Our job is to make sure that we manage our relationship so that we can contribute to regional and global peace and prosperity. Dialogue advances cooperation, and addressing our differences without allowing them to define what our relationship is so important.
Premier Li said seeking common ground is the key to handling the China-Australia relationship, and he had agreed with Albanese to navigate the differences befitting their comprehensive strategic partnership. Reiterating Australia's commitment to the One China policy, Albanese also raised concerns over the Pacific security and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And the 2 sides agreed to improve military communication in a bid to avoid incidents and jointly safeguard peace in the region and beyond. The 2 sides signed a range of agreements on bilateral trade, education, research, and cultural exchanges. China and Australia agreed to maintain high-level interactions, fully resume various areas of institutional dialogue, leverage their respective strengths, and expand cooperation in energy, mining, new energy vehicles, green development, and digital economy. To bolster people-to-people links, Li announced that China would include Australia in the list of unilateral visa-free countries. And the 2 sides agreed to provide each other with reciprocal access to 5-year multiple entry visas for tourism, business, and visiting family members. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
A Chinese vessel and a Philippine supply ship collided near the disputed Spratly Islands in the South China Sea today. It's the latest in a number of clashes near what Manila calls the Second Thomas Shoal, which is known as Renai Reef in China. The Chinese Coast Guard said a Philippine supply ship entered waters near the submerged reef after ignoring repeated solemn warnings. The supply ship then dangerously approached a Chinese vessel in an unprofessional manner, resulting in a collision. It said the Philippines is entirely responsible for the incident. The Chinese Foreign Ministry today said the Coast Guard's handling of the incident was professional and restrained. In Manila, the Philippine military said it would not discuss operational details on the supply ship's movements, but said the Chinese claims were deceptive and misleading. Israel's military announced a pause in fighting along a route in southern Gaza during daylight hours to free up a backlog of humanitarian aid deliveries for desperate Palestinians. The pause was to coincide with the start of the Muslim Eid al-Adha holidays. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said some members of his coalition said the pause was unacceptable. Netanyahu today dissolved his 3-member war cabinet after rival Benny Gantz quit last week. Nazvi Karim with more.
1 year ago, Nadia Al-Dabis and her family celebrated Eid al-Adha with meat, new clothes, toys, and the children's father. Not this year. We can't provide any of the things that we used to provide in the past, she said. This Eid, thanks to God, there is nothing. Nadia, who fled to central Deir al-Balah from the north, is among many mothers who are displaced and are alone in looking after their families. It was hoped that the Israeli military's tactical pause would help alleviate those struggling for provisions. The pause was announced by the IDF at the start of the Eid al-Adha holidays, during which fighting would be halted between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. to allow trucks from the Kerem Shalom crossing to deliver aid along a 12-kilometer stretch of a major north-south highway. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and hardliners in his coalition government were furious at what they said was a unilateral decision by the IDF. "We are a country with an army, not an army with a country," Netanyahu was quoted as saying. The IDF has since said its operations have returned to normal and assured the Prime Minister that fighting continues. The issue highlighted the internal conflicts plaguing the Israeli government, with Defense Chief and War Cabinet member Yoav Gallant defying party orders and voting against conscripting of Orthodox Jews to the military. With Israel continuing its bombardment of Gaza, Palestinian authorities said 9 people were killed, including 5 children, from airstrikes on 2 houses in the central Al-Bureij refugee camp. In Jerusalem, the funeral was held for a 21-year-old Israeli soldier killed by an explosion in Rafah. Israel said 12 soldiers have been killed in recent attacks, bringing the military deaths to 309 since October 7th. Meanwhile, IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari said exchanges with Lebanon's Hezbollah along Israel's northern border are in danger of escalating.
Hezbollah's increasing aggression is bringing us to the brink of what could be a wider escalation, one that could have devastating consequences for Lebanon and the entire region.
Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Welcome back. Several countries refused to denounce Russia in a final statement at the Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland. Over 90 nations gathered in a mountain resort to try to build international consensus to back Ukraine and put pressure on Russian leader Vladimir Putin to end the war. Russia was not invited, China didn't go, and some other countries that were there took a neutral stance. David Garrett reports.
Inside Ukraine, people on the streets and in cars parade for peace. Regularly, relatives of soldiers captured by Russia block highways and bridges in Kiev. Some wondered if the summit on peace in Ukraine, miles away in Switzerland, would make a difference. The conference concluded with around 80 countries calling for the territorial integrity of Ukraine to be the basis for any peace agreement. The majority around the table backed a Ukraine-led peace plan and the country's president, Volodymyr Zelensky.
The format of the summit is absolutely working, and I thank you all for that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dear colleagues, all those present, now we see that we all made the right choice. The choice of 2 security and 1 humanitarian points to start moving towards the restoration of full security and a just peace.
Some developing nations did not join Zelensky. Saudi Arabia did not offer to host the next meeting, as many thought they would. Riyadh didn't back the final statement. Neither did India, South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia or the UAE. China did not attend because Russia was not invited. Many called the conference a fool's errand without China. Zelensky addressed this point. All we want is for China to respect Ukraine's territorial integrity, he said. We respect your people, values, your choices, and would like China to do the same, nothing more or less. China is a powerful country, a powerful economy. It has influence on Russia, real influence. Some countries told Zelensky China must be involved in talks as soon as possible and want Putin at the table too.
We support the objectives of this summit and support the communication that is emanating from it. We do believe that if we're going to arrive at a definitive settlement, some method should be found whereby Russian Federation, and the People's Republic of China join these deliberations.
Even those who signed the final declaration failed to totally agree on where they stand.
He's insisting on ceding Ukrainian territory, even territory that today is not occupied by him. He's insisting on disarming Ukraine, leaving it vulnerable to future aggression. No country would ever accept these outrageous terms. When Russia says it is ready for peace based on the UN Charter, then the time will come for Russia to be part of our efforts to bring the path to peace to its destination.
The Kremlin said the results of the summit were close to zero, adding the offer by Putin on Friday was a chance for peace. A close official says future terms will be tougher. David Garrett, TVB News.
The government announced its strategy on hydrogen development in the city earlier today. They include suggesting legislative amendments in the first half of next year on the regulation of hydrogen manufacturing, storage, and transport. Timothy Lee reports.
In a bid to facilitate hydrogen development in the city, 3 of the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department's hydrogen street washing vehicles will begin their trials this year. Authorities established a hydrogen cross-department task force 2 years ago and announced 14 trial projects. They include a hydrogen-powered bus, which is already operational. Public hydrogen stations are still under construction. Speaking about the latest announced strategy of hydrogen development, Secretary for Environment and Ecology, Tse Ching-wan, said amendments on hydrogen development will be submitted to the Legislative Council in the first half of next year. They include the regulation of the manufacturing, storage, and supply of hydrogen. The government plans to apply international standards to hydrogen in the SAR by 2027 or before, allowing the city to develop its hydrogen economy and lower carbon emissions. Tse believes the government's hydrogen development strategy will bring about more economic opportunities for the city and the Greater Bay Area, and allow Hong Kong to better integrate into the mainland's overall development. This as the cost of using hydrogen as an energy source is higher than that of other clean energy. The government said it will first run trials on the relevantly cheaper gray hydrogen. Meanwhile, the Secretary for Environment and Ecology noted the MTR's hydrogen-powered trams are currently in the preparatory phase. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Hundreds of thousands of Muslims performed one of the final rites of the Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca, the symbolic throwing of stones. Dozens of people have reportedly died from heat stroke. The ritual marks the last few days of the Hajj journey to the holy city of Islam in Saudi Arabia. The stoning represents the actions of Prophet Abraham. Muslims believe Abraham threw stones at Satan, who tried to prevent him from carrying out God's order to sacrifice his son Ishmael. Saudi officials say more than 1.83 million pilgrims are taking part in this year's Hajj, which is a once-in-a-lifetime obligation for every Muslim who is physically and financially able. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Pearl Magazine is up shortly. Bye for now.